August 24th, 1945. 3:15 p.m. Higgins Avenue, Missoula, Montana. The air was dry and sun-warm when the olive-drab 212-ton GMC truck rolled to a stop in front of the drugstore, its canvas flaps tied back so everyone could see the women inside. The military police, in khaki shirts and white helmets, watched the sidewalk with M1 carbines slung low, but the townspeople mostly stared at the women. Small, dark-haired, some in reissued denim work coats stamped U.S., as if they were some distant rumor made real. Nakamura Aiko felt the metal step of the truck hot through her shoe as she climbed down. Inside the drugstore, the cool hit her first. Freon chill from the soda fountain, the sweet, loud smell of chocolate syrup and malt powder, the faint tang of floor cleaner. A Hamilton beach mixer thumped and whirred, green enamel and shiny spindles, beating milk and ice cream into a thickness she'd never seen even in Yokohama before the war. "That one's for the lady, Aiko?" the boy behind the counter said, uncertainty turning her name into 2 syllables. He wore a striped paper hat and had penciled Aiko in big swoops on a waxed cup. Wrong stroke order, wrong alphabet. Yet he grinned like it was a small kindness. She wrapped her fingers around the cold stainless steel beaker. The shake was absurdly thick, pale, crowned with condensation. Too sweet. Too much. Too peaceful. Behind her, one of the other Japanese women laughed, high, shocked, nervous, and even one of the MPs let the corner of his mouth lift. "This country," murmured Mrs. Sato in Japanese, "fights a war and drinks this?" Aiko tasted. Cold knifed up her teeth, cream and sugar and malt flooding her mouth. For a second, it was harder to hate. If you want more scenes like this from the forgotten side of the war, you should stay with us and tell me what country you're listening from. 8 weeks earlier, Fort Missoula internment camp, Montana. The heat came off the Missoula plain in wide, wavering sheets that made the barbed wire look like it was breathing. On June 29, 1945, Nakamura Aiko stood in the shade of a low wooden barracks and watched the morning formation spill out. Italians in one direction, Japanese men in another, and their own small knot of women held back until the MPs finished counting everyone else. Fort Missoula did not quite know what to do with them. The guard tower, with its sandbags and mounted searchlight, was built to watch labor details of men, not 5 Japanese women in borrowed denim. But the sergeant on duty still wore his white MP helmet and his Colt on the hip, and the M1 carbines still leaned in the corner of the gatehouse. Procedure was procedure. "Ladies, over here, please," called a young lieutenant from the administrative section. His name tag read Barker. His shirt was crisp despite the dust, and he carried a clipboard like a shield. "We're going to review camp rules again. You'll find it's not so bad if everyone cooperates." Aiko filed in with Mrs. Sato, who had been a teacher in Kobe, and 2 younger girls swept up in Manila. The air inside the briefing hut smelled of pine resin and old coffee. On the wall hung the English poster they had stared at for weeks. "Obey camp regulations. Privileges depend on conduct." Today, though, Barker's tone had a different brightness. "The Department of Justice and the Army," he said, eyes flicking between them to see who understood, "are considering limited community contact for internees who have shown good behavior. That means possible supervised visits into Missoula, stores, churches, maybe a soda fountain." He smiled like that was a universal dream. Mrs. Sato's mouth tightened. "To parade us," she murmured in Japanese. Aiko kept her face still. Visits? Outside the wire? Everything she had been told about Americans said they would never risk it. Everything the wire said agreed. Yet here was this lieutenant offering town like it was a reward for doing homework. Outside, the clang of the mess bell carried over the dry field. Inside, Barker tapped his clipboard. First, we need to know who can follow instructions. If she didn't get on that list now, she thought, she might never see how the enemy actually lived. July 2nd, 1945. The air inside the administrative hut was hotter than outside. The single electric fan on the filing cabinet only pushed warm air around, lifting the corners of manila folders stamped Department of Justice. Internment. Nakamura Aiko sat straight on the wooden chair, hands folded in her lap, while First Lieutenant Barker and a dark-haired Nisei-wak, Private Tanaka, interpreter, looked over her file. "Name, in English, please," Barker said. "Aiko Nakamura," she answered before Tanaka could translate. Her accent was careful, the way she had practiced years ago in Yokohama with a British tutor. Barker's pencil moved. "Place of birth?" "Yokohama, Kanagawa Prefecture." He glanced up, surprised she followed. Outside, boots crossed the boardwalk, a typewriter clacked in the next room, and somewhere a screen door snapped shut. It was the sound of orderly bureaucracy, not a POW cage. "You understand you're held as an enemy national under United States authority," Barker went on, slower now. "And that privileges, such as work details or supervised civilian contact, depend on conduct." "Yes, I understand," Aiko said. Tanaka didn't have to repeat it in Japanese. From the doorway, Mrs. Sato passed by on her way out, face like carved wood. She had been inside less than 5 minutes. Aiko caught the flick of disapproval. "Too quick to smile for them, are you?" And forced her eyes back to Barker. "Have you ever attempted to escape, sabotage, or encourage others to resist camp rules?" he asked, reading straight from the sheet. "No." "Would you be willing to follow an MP escort at all times while outside?" He paused. "That means no talking to strangers unless permitted. No entering unauthorized buildings. No photographs." "Yes, I will follow." He underlined something. "Her English is good," he said to Tanaka, almost as if Aiko couldn't hear. "Could be useful." Pride warmed her chest. Then, just as quickly, the warmth turned sour. Useful to them. Barker tore off a slip, initialed it. "You are tentatively approved for the Community Contact Program, subject to attendance at instruction sessions. Red Cross ladies will be here Thursday. You will report." Aiko took the slip with both hands. The paper was thin, American, smelling faintly of ink and dust. Outside, the barbed wire shimmered in the sun as before, but now there was a path through it, narrow, supervised, revocable. She stepped out into the glare. Mrs. Sato was waiting. "So," the older woman said quietly in Japanese, "you pleased them." Aiko folded the slip into her pocket. "I only followed the rules," she said. "If we are to see their town, someone must." And if she saw it, she thought, she could tell the others what was true and what was theater. The recreation hut had been swept, windows propped open with worn wooden wedges to let the heat out. By 2 p.m, the Montana sun was bright but forgiving. Cottonwoods beyond the fence stirred, and somewhere an MP laughed with another guard. Inside, 5 Japanese women sat on folding chairs while a woman from Missoula arranged her papers on the table like a school teacher. "I'm Mrs. Caldwell," she said, smiling at them all. "You can call me Helen if you like." Her dress was a light floral print, stockings slightly wrinkled at the ankles, hair pinned against the heat. She smelled faintly of powder and something lemony. "Lieutenant Barker says you ladies may be coming into town, so we want to make sure everyone feels comfortable." She wrote on the chalkboard in large letters, "Hello, thank you, please." The chalk squeaked. Beside Aiko, the younger Manila girl suppressed a sigh. Mrs. Sato's eyes were cool, evaluating. Aiko repeated softly, "Thank you," rounding the vowels the way the British tutor had taught her. "Very good," Helen said, a little too brightly. "Now in town, people may look. They're just curious. You can smile, nod, say, 'Good afternoon.'" We're all very glad the war is nearly over. Nearly over. The words hung. No one moved. Helen seemed to realize the weight and pivoted. She reached into her bag and pulled out a magazine, glossy, a recent issue. On the back was an advertisement, a young American woman laughing over a tall glass, whipped cream towering. The word malted was in big red letters. Places like the drugstore, the soda fountain, they said they don't mind if you come. Escorted, of course, Helen said. You might even get to try one. She tapped the picture. If sugar is available that day. Aiko stared. In 1945, with ships sunk and cities burning, Americans still poured milk and sugar into frivolity and invited enemies to taste it. Is it cold? She asked in English. Helen brightened. Oh yes, thick and cold. Outside, the barbed wire shimmered. Inside, 5 women suddenly had something very specific to lose if they misbehaved. Toward evening, the heat let go of the ground, and Fort Missoula turned gold. Shadows from the guard towers stretched long across the packed dirt. The Italian section was loud with a ball game, shouts in a rolling accent, the crack of a bat, an MP calling, "Keep it inside the line, fellas." On the women's side, it was quieter. They walked in pairs along the allowed path, 50 feet from the fence, as the rules said. It is a performance, Mrs. Sato said in Japanese, voice low. They show us kindness, so we forget they dropped bombs. 2 of the Manila girls nodded. Aiko kept her eyes ahead. The barbed wire was only chest high, but layered, with warning signs and a clear field beyond. An MP stood at the corner post, white helmet, carbine slung, watching without hostility. Behind him, the mountains beyond Missoula rose blue and steady. If we refuse the performance, Aiko said, we stay inside forever. To stay inside is less shame than to smile for them. Aiko didn't answer. She was still holding, in memory, the magazine picture of the laughing woman and the tall glass crowned with cream. It was frivolous, yes, but it was also real. The enemy actually had such things in 1945 and was prepared to let prisoners taste. They had strayed a little closer to the fence while talking. The MP lifted a hand. "Ma'am, little farther back from the wire, please," he called. His tone was not sharp. American, Midwestern maybe. "Just along the path, thank you." Aiko stopped at once and stepped back. "Yes," she called in English. "We stay here." The MP tipped his helmet brim with 2 fingers, satisfied, then went back to watching the compound. Mrs. Sato's mouth pinched. "You bow to them quickly." "He corrected us without shouting," Aiko said quietly. "He could have made it an incident." From the Italian field came cheering. Aiko looked from the wire to the guard to the mountains, trying to hold all 3 truths at once: the captivity, the rule, and the ordinary politeness of the man with the gun. If Americans could enforce rule and still be human, then the world was not drawn in the hard ink Tokyo had promised. She decided she would watch them more closely. Only by watching could she tell which part was real when she finally walked their streets. They arrived 2 days later in a dusty Plymouth sedan with a Red Cross pennant clipped to the hood. An MP checked their papers at the gate, then waved them through. It was strange to watch Americans come inside the wire so casually, handbags on their arms, summer hats pinned tight, like they were visiting a church social and not an enemy compound. The taller one introduced herself as Margaret Howard, from town, husband overseas with the 41st Infantry Division. The younger girl, 18, cheeks sunbrowned, was her niece, Ruth. They laid out on the recreation table a small spread, coffee in an enamel pot, a plate of cookies clearly stretched with oats and not much sugar, and, best of all, a stack of clean magazines. "We thought you ladies might like to see what's going on," Margaret said, glancing at Aiko, knowing she had the best English. "We don't have much, sugar's still tight, but we manage." You fight a war, and you still bring cookies, Aiko thought. The other Japanese women hung back at first, polite but stiff. Aiko stepped forward, picked up a magazine. This one was from early summer. On one page, an ad showed a girl in a short-sleeved blouse laughing over a counter, a tall metal mixer behind her. The text promised a cool, frosty malted for a few cents. In Missoula, there is like this? Aiko asked. Oh, sure, Ruth said, eager. Rexall, the drug on Higgins, they've still got a fountain. College kids love it. Farmers, too, when they come in. If the Army says it's okay, they'll serve you, I bet. Serve you, not exhibit you. Behind them, an MP crossed the yard, boots thudding on the boards. The wire glinted. Yet inside this rectangle of America, women compared wartime recipes and skirt patterns as if Tokyo and Manila had not burned. Our milk comes in from the valley, not like the big cities, Margaret explained. So a shake's no trouble if you've got the stamps. The logic of scarcity that ruled Aiko's memory did not apply here. These people assumed comfort first, then fitted the war around it. If they meant to take the Japanese women into that world, even for an hour, Aiko needed to know what other news was coming. What would Americans do if the war turned suddenly? She glanced toward the admin building, where a radio crackled most evenings. The next time it was on, she decided, she would listen. That night the air didn't cool until well after sunset. The barracks windows were propped open, screens buzzing with small insects. From the direction of the admin building came the steady, nasal voice of an American announcer, thin through the summer dark. Someone had turned the radio up so the guards on the porch could hear baseball scores. But before the sports, there was news. Meeting at Potsdam, President Truman, Prime Minister Churchill, Generalissimo Chiang, declaration to Japan. Aiko sat on her bunk, elbows on her knees, listening hard. English spoken fast was like river water over rocks. She caught words, lost others. Across from her, the Manila girl whispered, "What is he saying?" But Aiko held up a hand. Japan must surrender unconditionally or face prompt and utter destruction. The word destruction hit even through the static. Outside, boots crossed the gravel. An MP paused near their window, carbine on his shoulder, listening too. His silhouette was easy in the glow from the admin porch, not like a man at war. After the announcer moved on to European occupation news, the MP said, half to himself, "Won't be long now." Aiko rose and stepped closer to the screen. "Excuse me," she said in English, "about Japan?" He turned, surprised she addressed him. "Yeah," he said. "Your people got their terms today. They take it, this is over. Couple weeks, maybe. You'll see what we're really like then. What we're really like. As if this wire, rifles, files was just a costume. In Japan," Aiko said carefully, "they say, 'No surrender.'" The MP shrugged, casual. "Your bosses don't got much choice now." He moved on, boots fading. From another barracks, someone began low, mournful talk in Japanese. Potsdam. Destruction. Unconditional. The words were not supposed to come with invitations to town. Back on her bunk, Aiko felt the two tracks of reality grinding together. Tokyo's radio, distant, heroic, thin on food, and Missoula's radio, confident, well-fed, planning for after. Yet the camp had not canceled the civilian visits. They were adding English lessons, preparing to show themselves. If the enemy thought enough of the future to teach her how to say good afternoon to a shopkeeper, then the shape of defeat might be softer than she'd believed, or more humiliating. She lay down, listening to the radio fade into big band music, and understood that she would have to walk through their town to know which. They were formed up as if they were recruits. July sun sat high over Fort Missoula, bleaching the gravel pale. An olive-drab truck idled nearby, its tailgate down, canvas rolled up. Two MPs in white helmets stood at either side, carbine slung but not pointed. Lieutenant Barker held the clipboard again, but today his voice was sharper. "All right, ladies, this is how it will go on the day. You will move as a group. You will stay with your escort. You will speak to civilians only when introduced. You will not purchase or accept items without permission. Understood?" "Yes," Aiko said, the first to answer. The others echoed, some slower. Barker called names. "Nakamura, Aiko." "Present." "Sato, Haruko." "Present." Each woman wore, pinned to her borrowed denim, a stiff paper pass with her name typed. It was both invitation and tether. Aiko felt the edge of hers scratch her collarbone. "Form 2s, Barker ordered. "MPs will walk front and rear. In town, there will be more people. Do not break ranks to look in windows." Ruth, the volunteer from town, stood off to the side watching face A, little strained. Seeing, perhaps, for the first time that this wasn't just ladies' social work, but custody. They walked 10 paces to the truck. Turn, halt. Barker watched their spacing like a drill sergeant. One of the Manila girls glanced toward the Italian compound where men were lounging in the sun, and Barker snapped, "Eyes front, miss! You do that downtown, you cause a problem." Heat rose in the girl's cheeks. A ripple of resentment passed through the line. Wasn't this meant to be goodwill? Why, then, did it feel like being paraded? But when the rehearsal ended, Barker did not say it was canceled. He ticked his sheet. "Good," he said. "We'll do it once more before the day. But I think you can manage. The merchants have been notified." He looked at Aiko. "You translate that." She did, watching the relief and anger mix on the other women's faces. They were wanted and constrained, invited and guarded. As the truck engine cut and the MPs dispersed, Aiko stood in the dust, fingers brushing the paper pass. They were going to let enemies into Missoula anyway. Gratitude tightened her throat. Humiliation burned under it. On August 6th, the radio was turned up so loud even the Italians stopped their game. The announcer's voice had that special clipped importance. Aiko was halfway to the laundry shed when the words reached her through the hot air. An atomic bomb, new and revolutionary, dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. She stopped. The gravel under her sandals suddenly felt unsteady. Hiroshima, western Honshu. Not so far from where one of the Manila girl's cousins had married. Not so far, in Japanese terms, from many people's someones. Women poured from the barracks, heads craned toward the admin porch. An MP, no older than 20, was already explaining to another, excited. "They say it was like the sun," he said. "One plane, just one. Like the sun. Like the burning at the heart of the world." Aiko gripped the laundry basket harder. "Is it true?" Mrs. Sato demanded in Japanese. "One bomb." Aiko moved toward the porch. Lieutenant Barker was there, listening, jaw tight. He saw them gather. "Ladies," he said, switching to his careful tone, "there's been significant military action in the Pacific. I can't give you operational details. You will maintain routine." "Where?" Aiko asked. "Hiroshima. Many people." "I don't have a casualty report," he said. And the fact that he called it a casualty report, as if it were just numbers on a form, made the air thinner. "You will maintain routine," he repeated. Back at the barracks, the women sat on bunks or on the floor, hands over mouths. One began to pray under her breath. The idea of a single bomb unmaking a city did not fit with any of the stories Tokyo had told. That kind of power belonged to gods, not to the country that sent lemon-scented women into camps. By evening, the first reaction settled into a stunned quiet. And then, as if the world had not changed, the day's schedule was posted outside the admin building. English instruction, 1400 hours. Thursday, preparatory drill. Friday, civilian contact to be confirmed. They were still going to take them to town. In her bunk, Aiko stared at the ceiling. The same people who melted a city wanted to hand her a cold drink. To refuse would be purity. To go would be truth. She decided she had to go. On August 15th, they did not hear the emperor's voice. They heard an American announcer say that the Emperor of Japan had addressed his people, accepting the Allies' terms. The words came through the camp radio flat and matter of fact, sandwiched between commentary about celebrations in Honolulu and speculation about demobilization. No trembling, no archaic court Japanese, no breath from Tokyo. Just, Japan has surrendered. In the women's barracks, it was as if the air itself sagged. Mrs. Sato sat on her bunk, hands gripping the frame so hard her knuckles whitened. "We were not meant to hear it from them," she said. "It should have been our air, our radio." One of the Manila girls began to cry silently, shoulders shaking. Outside, from the MP post, came a whoop. "War's over, boys." And then laughter, boots running, a screen door banging, an engine revved somewhere, celebratory. For the guards, it was release. For the women, it was exposure. Aiko listened to the announcer name places: Tokyo, Manila, Shanghai, like chessboard squares now opening to American ships. The same country that had wired their compound was now promising food, reconstruction, friendship. That afternoon, Lieutenant Barker came by the barracks. His face was careful, respectful. He removed his cap. "Ladies," he said, "your country has accepted the Allied terms. Hostilities are ended. There will be arrangements for repatriation later." He hesitated. "The community contact visit will proceed as scheduled. It is good for everyone to see each other as people." As people. Now that Japan had bowed, the Americans wanted to show their smiles. After he left, debate flared. "We should not go," Mrs. Sato said. "Not on the day we learn we have lost." "To go is to let them win twice," another agreed. Aiko felt the old narrative, heroic resistance to the decadent enemy, crack like thin ice. It was lost already. Refusing the visit would not restore honor. It would only keep them ignorant. If Japan was to be occupied by men like Barker and the farm women and the soda fountain boy, someone had to know what that truly meant. "At home they will see Americans on the streets," Aiko said quietly. "If we can see first, we can tell them, better to go." She kept to herself the second truth, that now, with the war officially over, the sweetness would be harder to hate. August 24th, 1945, they rode in the back of the army truck with the canvas rolled up so the townspeople could see them. The engine drummed through the wood benches. 2 MPs rode in back, 2 more in the cab. Missoula slid toward them. Grain elevator, lumber yards, then houses with watered lawns, trees throwing shade across sidewalks as if no one in this town had ever heard an air raid siren. "Remember," Barker called from the cab window, voice raised over the engine, "stay with your escort. No wandering." Aiko's paper pass was now a small card on a string around her neck. She kept a hand on it, the way she used to keep a hand on her rail ticket in Yokohama. Beside her, Mrs. Sato sat stiff, lips thin. The Manila girl's eyes were wide despite herself. The truck turned onto Higgins Avenue. People did look. Men in work shirts paused. A woman with a shopping basket stopped mid-step. 2 boys on bicycles slowed. The MP's white helmets and carbines said, "Controlled, safe." Behind them, the Bitterroot Mountains rose calm and blue. They dismounted in front of the drugstore. The bell above the door jingled as they went in, and at once the world changed temperature. Cool air, glass jars, the smell of sugar, coffee, liniment, floor wax. A Hamilton Beach mixer on the counter rattled as the soda jerk finished a drink for a local girl. He stared for half a second at the Japanese women, then grinned, boyish, as if they were just odd tourists. "Afternoon, ladies," he said. "You here with the camp?" "Yes," Aiko said. "Lieutenant said we could fix you something." He grabbed a waxed cup, pulled a pencil from behind his ear. Name? Aiko. A-I-K-O. He wrote it in big, looping Roman letters, awkward but earnest, and held it up like proof he'd got it. Behind Aiko, one of the other women giggled, the sound high, nervous, disbelieving. An MP shifted but didn't hush her. The boy filled the stainless beaker, milk, ice cream, a scoop of malt, and clipped it under the mixer. The machine whirred, a thick, industrious sound. Condensation formed on the metal. He poured, and the shake barely flowed. He handed it across. "Careful, it's real cold." The steel beaker shocked her fingers. She lifted the straw. The first mouthful was sweetness, and cold so deep it hurt her teeth, a kind of luxury built on dairies and electricity, and no bombing raids. For a heartbeat, Hiroshima was far away. "This country," Mrs. Sato said in Japanese behind her, voice a blend of contempt and wonder, "fights a war and drinks this." Aiko swallowed, looked at the boy's penciled letters on the cup, at the MPs pretending not to listen, at the sunlit street outside where Americans went about a victorious August. She thought, "I have to tell it exactly like this." That night, the barracks smelled faintly of dust, clean cotton, and, strangest of all, sweet milk. Aiko had brought the paper cup back, rinsed, the penciled. Aiko smeared, but legible. She set it on her bunk like evidence. The women who hadn't been chosen gathered close. "So?" one asked. "They stared?" "They stared," Aiko said. "But not in anger, in curiosity." "It is to show Missoula we are merciful," another said. "It is theater." "Yes," Aiko said. "And no." They waited. Even Mrs. Sato, who had tasted the shake herself, sat on the edge of the bunk, eyes lowered, letting Aiko speak because she had more English, more words. The store was cool. They have machines to make the drink thick. The boy wrote my name. She held up the cup. He did not know the characters, but he tried. Then he gave me this. She searched for a word that was not betrayal. It was very good. One of the Manila girls let out a breathy laugh. "Good? From the enemy?" "That is the problem," Aiko said. "It is good, and it is from the enemy." Silence. Outside, an MP's footsteps crunched past. "Mrs. Sato said something," Aiko went on. She looked at the older woman for permission. Sato inclined her head. She said, "This country fights a war and drinks this. That is what we must remember. Both things at once." She let the sentence settle. It had the right weight, the right balance of condemnation and wonder. The women could take it home and repeat it without sounding bewitched. "Did they speak of occupation?" someone asked. "No. They spoke like the war was over, and ordinary life was right there. They expect us to see them as people now." A few women looked away, struggling. "If you accepted the milkshake, did you accept Hiroshima?" "They will occupy our ports, our cities," Aiko said. "If we only tell our people they are devils and they meet men like that boy, they will not understand. If we tell them they can destroy and they can share, then they will be ready." The cup sat between them, flimsy, foreign, smelling faintly of sugar. It was not an argument. It was proof. The first talk of going home came with new forms. In early September, clerks from the admin building began moving through the barracks with clipboards and typed lists, names, ages, places to be returned. Medical checks would come later. Transport would depend on ships, weather, orders from far offices. But the idea was planted. This camp was not forever. That afternoon, when the light fell sideways through the barracks windows, and most of the women were at laundry or English class, Aiko sat on her bunk with a school-style notebook open. The paper was U.S. issue, faintly lined. The pencil was dull. Beside her, wrapped in a handkerchief, lay the paper cup from Missoula, its penciled Ico ghosted but visible. She began to write in English first, because English forced precision. August 24th, 1945. Escorted visit to Missoula, Montana. Participants: 5 Japanese females from Fort Missoula. Internment: escorted by 2 military police, U.S. Army, Lieutenant Barker responsible. Destination: drugstore, soda fountain on Higgins Avenue. She noted the machine, the cold, the sweetness, the way the boy had not hesitated. She did not write that it made her reconsider hatred. She wrote, "They live as if war is far. Even after bombing Hiroshima, they make milk drinks with sugar." Then she switched to Japanese and wrote the same events, but with edges softened, so a future official or relative would not accuse her of admiration. She wrote, "They possess great capacity, and their people appear well fed. We must know this." Footsteps passed outside. She paused, listening. No one came in. Gently she folded the handkerchief back over the cup and slid it into the bottom of her duffel, under the government-issue blanket and extra stockings. If anyone searched, it would look like trash. In years to come, she imagined some ship to Yokohama, a dock ruined, officials asking what the Americans were like. She would have this: not the cup itself, which might not survive, but the description of the moment when enemy hands gave enemy sweetness. Loyalty, she decided, was not repeating the old slogans. Loyalty was telling Japan exactly what the world looked like now, even if it was humiliating, especially if it was humiliating. Outside, an MP called the evening count. The war was over. The wire still stood. In her duffel, a flimsy American cup waited to travel across the Pacific, carrying the taste of a thick Montana milkshake into a country that had never imagined such a thing.